Hello and welcome to the 5th episode of the day of the Father and Son Pastime Podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin. How are you?
That's his name. He's doing really well with that.
I keep thinking I'm Dad, but I'm like, no, it makes no sense to anybody but us.
They can. It's a Father and
Yeah.
Son Pastime
Yeah.
Podcast. They know who you are.
Yeah.
You're not the son in this situation. I
Yeah.
think they can tell that. He's
Yeah.
almost 70 years old, people. Good for him. His birthday's coming up.
Yeah, I know.
Well, Dad, we completely went off the rails in the first 25 seconds. That makes sense because the division of the NL Central seems off the rails to me. The Cardinals are going to be sellers. We're going to have possibly buying Reds, maybe buying Pirates. Feels very upside down. This is my dad's division growing up in Chicago as a Cubs fan. So we're going to start with the Chicago Cubs. Again, if you are new to this podcast, you're new to this offseason outlook series, we're going into a deep dive into each team, and we're seeing what they lost after the 2024 season, free agency, trades, retirement, and what they kind of need to field a team for the 2025 season. Minor predictions in there, but those predictions come later on our last episode of the day with the top 50 free agent predictions. But Dad, talk Cubs ball. Who'd they lose?
They lost. It hasn't been a horrible loss so far. Kyle Hendricks, Drew Smiley, and then they DFA'd a few folks. Wisdom, Madrigal got off the team. So they really need to replenish their bench. But I think what the Cubs need more than anything else is offense. Lack of power this year. They're looking for a power hitter. They would love to get a number 3 or 4 starter that's a veteran. And their bullpen was a shambles last year. The first half of the season when they went from first place to last place, relief pitching really let them down. They do not have a closer as of this date. They probably need 1 or 2 more setup people and probably 2 veteran starters. They need to spend some money, but I think they won't. I think they're going to do most of their acquisitions and trades. I think right now, apparently Bellinger is on the block. At the pre-general managers meeting a couple weeks ago, they were peddling Horner and Bellinger for anything they could. I think they'll make a big trade during the winter meetings. I think one or both will go. And I really think they're going to restructure their offense to be a little more athletic, steal some more bases, have a true leadoff hitter, possibly. Pete Crow Armstrong might be the guy who leads off for the next 7-8 years. He had a surprisingly good year. Came up mid-season, got thrown into the outfield, ended up hitting very, very well, taking a lot of walks, has unbelievable speed and defense. He could be the leadoff batter they've been looking for since Dexter Fowler, and that was 2016. So with that in mind, I think they'll be very active in the trade market, pick up a few free agents along the way, especially for the bullpen, but they need a lot of work. It's a very winnable division. And that's the largest market in the NL Central is the Cubs. They should have financial ability to do that. They just stumbled the last 2 years. Thought putting $8 million for a new manager would fix some problems. It didn't. They need some more talent. So it's funny when they list the best players in the National League, you can't find a Cub in the top 25 or 30. So that says something. They need some star power. Probably some left-handed power as well, but they really need to rework the lineup and add to the pitching side of things and create an entire new bench because all their bench players have gone.
It was a deep dive, everybody. Dad, to supplement you, because you did such a deep dive on your team, do any of the lights of Madrigal, Wisdom, Talkman, Alzolay, Davis, Smiley, Armstrong, and obviously not Hendricks, but those first 7, any of them come back to the team?
None.
Okay. So they've added Eli of 3 points. That was the first one. You answer that in one word. They added Eli Morgan. Is he not a closer in your mind? Is he more of a setup guy?
Setup guy.
And they
don't have a closer.
Thoughts on Hodge? I know he got a couple saves for them last year.
He did. Young guy, has a hell of potential, but you want a proven closer if you're going to get that title. they have a habit of making pitchers who are young end up on the IL, which is a little scary. I would have him set up and not the pressure of closing for an entire season. He could be the 8th inning guy and a closer be the 9th. He has potential, but right now I wouldn't do that. I think it's too much pressure for an entire season.
Okay. And then I have them that they could spend up to $50 million and still be under the luxury tax. You think they spend that and trade, or they don't even really go into that 50 at all?
They go into that 50, they spend most of it, but their stars will come back in trades.
Okay. I now want to go.
And I think Bellinger gets $27 million. He comes off the books, I'll have even more.
Okay. I'm going to go around the horn, and you tell me if it's like a keep, platoon, or improve.
Sure.
Okay. So keep is like
I like
this.
I like it.
Platoon is add, supplement, and then completely change.
Yep.
Okay. Amaya behind home plate.
I need help. He add 2. Platoon.
Michael Busch at first.
He gets traded.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Nico Horner.
Traded.
Dansby Swanson.
Kept.
I have a combo of Paredes and Shaw at third.
Oh, I like what you did. Good research, by the
Thank
way.
you.
I think they keep both.
Okay. Bellinger at DH. You kind of said he's
Gone.
traded.
Yep.
Happen left.
Keeper.
PCA and right or center.
He's your star.
And then Suzuki and right.
He's going to end up being DH. They'll end up getting another outfielder.
So moved. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what do we think about the rotation? Amanaga, Steele, Taillon, and Assad.
Assad will be in the bullpen.
Okay.
So they need a 4 and a 5, and
Okay.
they need a left-hander.
I had a note here that I think the Cubs will either get an ace or innings eaters. So you think it'll be innings eaters under that mentality?
I don't think they can afford an ace, but they hope to God, maybe via trade. Seattle's talking about, a couple of people coming this way, including one of their better pitchers. But they do need an ace. I think that comes via trade rather than free agency.
Luis Castillo for Cody Bellinger, who hangs up first.
I think that's a good trade for both. And it helps both teams. And if Seattle is...
Cody would play first for them, probably.
Apparently, I saw something like a 3-way deal, involving the Cubs in Seattle that goes back and forth. Horner's in that mix too. They have plenty of people to take Horner's place, so I think he's probably the one that gets traded first.
Okay. So
Bellinger, they might have to eat some money out of that.
Okay, yeah. So Bellinger and cash for Luis Castillo. You think it's a good deal for both sides?
Yes.
Okay. Bellinger's got to be a good Bellinger. That's a really good deal for the Cubs.
And he had a so-so year. He has power, and then that goes through a mediocre year. For some, a lot of people who've analyzed his swing say he's more of a gap kind of guy and all that. In Wrigley, he should be hitting more home runs. He didn't have the best year, but again, he was good, but not great. They need somebody great, and that's where the big trade comes from.
Well, speaking of trades, let's go to St. Louis. So, Dad, obviously you've seen more iterations of the Cubs-Cardinals rivalry than I have. I can't recall a Cardinals team that is basically open to retooling completely, whether it's selling or whatever word you want to say.
Yeah, they made that decision early.
So let's talk about who's walking and then things adding to it. Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah.
Multi-year first baseman's contract's finally up. Andrew Kittredge, good reliever.
Yeah.
Matt Carpenter probably will retire. Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, those 1 year starting pitchers they added last year. Keenan Middleton, and then technically Brandon Crawford retired, even though he got released by the Cardinals mid-year. I just want to add that to him. I said they need a direction, Dad, and it looks like they're going to sell and trade. And they have multiple. They have 2 high-end candidates, and then they have multiple. Maybe they get packaged with these high ends. So Nolan Arenado still has value. I know that he's getting a little older. I know there's talks of switching to first. Give me the Gold Glove third baseman, just like Brooks Robinson, until he's dead at third base. And obviously Ryan Helsley, as a closer, led the league in saves last year. They have value.
I agree, but it's so funny. Around August, they admitted their farm system was in shambles, and they had nothing coming up the pipeline. So they said, hey, we're going to concentrate on rebuilding the farm system so they have a steady flow of talent coming up. So next year for them will not be the greatest year. I think it's a rebuilding year in hopes they get enough young players through trades, whatever, start building up. I think they've kind of raised a white flag for next year, and they're going to build for the future. I can see St. Louis struggling next year.
Oh, I think they'll be 5th.
Yeah.
They've moved Contreras to first base. So I think Ivan Herrera, kind of a rookie, will be at catcher.
It's funny. The Cubs wanted to do that years ago, and he can say, no, 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 I'm a good defensive catcher. It's taken a couple years for St. Louis to go, he's not a good defensive catcher. So, yeah, it's funny.
Mason Wentz seems to be that team's star.
He's a good shortstop.
Jordan Walker, obviously, hopefully has potential. Hopefully he clicks. But there's rumors of a Nootbaar trade. There's rumors of a Sonny Gray trade. If Eric Fetty has any value, I don't think Steven Matz has any value. But, like, if you're a veteran on this team, the Cardinals might move you. And again, they might move you in a package like an Arenado. Hey, take Steven Matz too. Mm-hmm. Or, oh, you want Helsley? Well, then you're also going to take Miles Mikolas. So we'll see. It could be moving multiple contracts and not getting prospects back, or it could be holding on to bad contracts to get better prospects.
They might be really active at the trade deadline too.
Yeah, I see that too. I think they'll be very active, honestly, the next month.
Yeah.
I think the Arenado trade, unfortunately, looks likely, especially with... I mean, you have two cornerstones. If you have Goldschmidt and Arenado, get rid of the word Cardinals for a second, and you have a Hall of Fame third baseman and arguably a Hall of Fame first baseman leaving your team in the same year.
Yeah.
Why are we building a team?
And so many teams we mentioned so far need either a first baseman or third baseman.
Oh, yeah.
So there's plenty of teams that will be clamoring for those guys.
Yep.
And if they get 2 or 3 prospects, that's pretty darn good.
I think Arenado's contract is something similar to what Bregman might get. So...
I would go with Arenado every time.
Defensively, yes. Yeah. Offensively, I think Bregman makes more sense, and Bregman's obviously a little younger. But Arenado doesn't have that many years left, so maybe you see, a Key Brian Hayes becoming a free agent in 2 to 3 years, or, I don't know, bad examples here, a Ryan McMahon finally becoming a free agent or something. But yeah, I obviously like Arenado defensively as a third baseman, but go ahead and plant your flag that the Cardinals will be 5th in the Central. I don't think there's that much hope, especially if you, as soon as that first trade comes through, whether it's Nootbaar, Helsley, Arenado, more will follow. So
that's really good, and it's a shame because I think the St. Louis fan base will keep supporting them, but again, they're made a decision, and here they go. So, yeah, but they still ended up tied for second place. Even with not a great team. Says something about the division.
Mm-hmm. It says more about the division than that team.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to the NL champs, the Milwaukee Brewers. Great team, can win the Central, can't win anything in the playoffs. They have some exits. They have some injuries. They might have more exits if they trade Devin Williams.
Well, they got a key exit.
Well, Willy Adames is not in their price range. And I don't know how...
They're going to miss him.
I think he's replaceable in the eyes of the Brewers, and I'll explain a little bit more. So Milner, Adames, Joe Ross, Frankie Montas, Wade Miley, Gary Sanchez, Colin Rea are all gone. I don't think they have that much money to spend in Milwaukee. But I think they'll have trade partners with Devin Williams, and this is how they get a shortstop / third baseman. Now, Joey Ortiz for them, and that lovely Corbin Burns trade from the Orioles, turned out to be a pretty decent third baseman.
Surprisingly, he did a nice job.
He could play short, obviously, if they keep him at third. So really, when you're dangling Devin Williams in front of people, what shortstop offerings do you get? I've heard of Devin Williams for Gavin Lux straight up, where Lux plays shortstop and Ortiz plays third base. I think that's certainly an option. What was another one that I saw that was kind of interesting to me? I saw before India got traded, I saw like a Jonathan India for Devin Williams trade, but I think the Brewers would have lost that trade. But regardless, they're going to use that depth in their bullpen to add to that shortstop third base hole. I think they need... Hopefully Woodruff comes back for them full healthy. Robert Gasser, one of their big prospects, he's out for pretty much all year with Tommy John. Tobias Myers had a great year. They still have... We'll see how well DL Hall is. They're the Brewers. Obviously, Jackson Churio, runner-up in Rookie of the Year. They have a great catcher with the younger Contreras brother. They still have a Christian Yelich. Bryce Terang had a great year. So there's some upside to this team. It's just a matter of who kind of gives up I've seen Bohm for Devin Williams. If Bohm wants out of, not wants out, but if the Phillies tell Bohm to get out to get Devin Williams.
Get out.
Get out. So again, then Ortiz would go to shortstop. So there's a couple different options. where Devin Williams gets moved and they get an infielder.
Yeah. And, DJ Hall, if he comes back, he'd probably...
DL.
I'm sorry, DL. I think he ends up being middle relief. And if he can keep healthy, that trade is a really good trade for the Brewers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't think they'll be re-signing any top free agents. But let me see. I'm just going to take a quick peek here, people, to see if I have the Brewers getting anyone. I have them getting one person in free agency. I just want to see who it is. Sorry to keep everybody waiting. It's a back end of the rotation arm, so nothing too something. But the Brewers have a great pitching system, and they'll fix that.
Yeah, and that Buck Murphy did a great job managing that squad, and you gotta have hats off to him for taking control and really doing a great job and mixing pieces together to make them, a good team. No one thought they were going to win the division, so good for him.
I did. Well, I technically had them in the playoffs. I had the Reds winning the division, but I bet the Brewers on the over. Dad, speaking of the Reds, a very mid-tier Reds team, had a lot of injuries last year. Had some just issues all around. Hunter Green finally figured out. He had what I always thought was a possible Cy Young winner. He had a ERA under 3. A year off of Matt McLain really hurt him. Ellie De La Cruz was a superstar. And I think they are finally figuring themselves out. They made a trade. They finally got rid of Jonathan India. So they don't have any... I guess Ellie De La Cruz is their marquee player now, but they don't have any true long-timers. I don't think there's a single Red on this team that's been on the team pre-COVID. So it's kind of interesting to see the development of a youth team. I think there's some money to be spent if they choose that. They obviously made a trade. Let me see how much. I thought whatever the Brewers spend, the Reds could double it. So if that's $10 million, the Reds are spending $20. If that's $15 million, the Reds are going to spend $30. They re-signed Nick Martinez, sort of slightly unexpected maybe, with a qualifying offer acceptance. They obviously lost Jonathan India, Ahmed Rosario, Buck Farmer, Justin Wilson, Casey Kelly, Jacob Junis, and Luke Molly, all off the team. So, yeah, I still think there might be availability to bolster that outfield depth, but it would be a lower, platoon situation.
They could probably use a little more power in that, ballpark. It'd be great to get some more home runs. They, were really good at the beginning of the year and kind of went downhill as the year went on. But yeah, they have some talent, and I think they need to add bench and some veteran hitters.
I like Reese Hines for them. He was a really late call up, has some good power. We'll see if CES Christian Encarnacion Strand has some success at DH. Spencer Steer, TJ Friedel, and Jake Fraley. I just think that offense could be a little bit better. Their infield's great. I just think their outfield has some holes that I think platooning a veteran. I wrote down the names of Tommy Pham, Jesse Winker, Adam Duvall, or Alex Verdugo could really benefit that team.
Yeah, and they would get playing time.
Yes.
So that's the key. And Winkler would be going back to Cincinnati. He was one time.
Yeah, and I don't think just as I said that. I mean, I really think Jesse Winker stays in New York. I think that would make a lot of sense. But somebody that has some, maybe not Winker, Verdugo, and I also wrote down Tommy Pham. So maybe it's just Adam Duvall because all those other guys have some personality issues.
Yeah.
Terry Francona, the new guy of the Reds,
that
won't tolerate most of those attitudes.
That helps.
So I also have Jock Peterson as a possibility too.
Yeah, I think Francona going to Cincinnati is a good move.
Yeah, best audition yet. I didn't really like their old manager. He was always in fights. David Bell. He was always in fights.
Yeah, I know.
He loved Yasiel Puig when he was there because Puig was always fighting. That last team of the Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They got the almost Cy Young winner, Rookie of the Year winner, Paul Skeens. Mm-hmm. They have a pretty decent rotation. They lost a surprisingly amount of players for how, I guess, little they typically spent. Connor Joe, Hunter Stratton, you know how I feel about Strattons. Brian De La Cruz, who's a midseason trade. Marco Gonzalez, Jalen Beeks, Andrew McCutcheon, he'll probably sign for another one-year contract. Aroldis Chapman, Yasmani Grandal, Rowdy Tellez, and Michael A. Taylor. So a good amount of losses, and somehow they only still have about 15 to 20 million to spend. I wrote down, do pick a position for O'Neal Cruz. There was thoughts of him moving to center. I like him at short a lot more. And then figure out the rookie situation. They have Henry Davis and Endy Rodriguez as sort of the catcher. One of those could play right field, probably Henry Davis. I think one of them could play first base, honestly. See if Jack Sawinski has any ability to kind of come back. He had a star, and then he had a drop, and then he had a star, and then he had a drop. Nick York, if they don't like IKF at second, Nick York, and they have another guy that I think is Tamar Johnson or Jackson.
Yes.
That could play infield as well. So they have a lot of rookies. I don't know if they'll click all with the Skeens youth movement and develop. I think this team needs some veteran leadership, veteran addition that even is beyond just re-adding Kutch. Couple options I wrote down, Dad, was Anthony Rizzo at first base, Eloy Jimenez, Carlos Santana, who's played there before, or Joey Gallo. I think really only one or two of those guys are true leaders, but that kind of veteran presence in the lineup as a bat.
I'm going to go way on the limb here.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah. They signed nobody?
No. They got a young pitcher coming up called Bubba Chandler.
Oh, fun.
He'll be the 3 starter. With that rotation, and if they add to it, Pittsburgh makes the playoffs next year.
That could be a fun thing to watch. I will not believe, sort of just like the Orioles, until the owners and the general managers invest in that team, I don't buy that team long term. Go back and watch previous podcasts. I had the 2026 World Series, Orioles over Pirates. They just got to get there.
I think in that division, as people trying to find themselves, Pittsburgh, I think, has the best young talent. I think they skyrocket up. I think they're going to compete and will make the playoffs. That's my prediction right now.
I love it. Past predictions, I had a horrible one this year. I had Braves over Orioles in the World Series. But this year I had Dodgers over the Orioles. I don't know about the Orioles, but I'm 100% still picking the Dodgers to repeat.
Dynasty.
Maybe. It seems that way. But, Dad, we're just teasing the NL West at this point. So we're going to wrap up the Central. Again, follow us at Pastime Podcast _ on Twitter and Instagram. And we are the Father and Son Pastime Podcast here on YouTube and on Facebook.
Thanks for watching.
Subscribe. You can do it. It's easy. Press some buttons below. You got it.